What's up, everybody? Welcome to the channel. Today is going to be the next episode in my tier list series. Today I'm going to be talking about the all-round category. So this is going to be assault rifles and LMGs and how they rank in terms of all-round performance. So they still need to kill quickly up close and be good weapons up close, as well as being decent at range. So these would be weapons that you'd typically run with like a sniper rifle or an RPG, things like that. So that's what I'm going to be covering today. So in my previous video, more than half of you weren't subscribed. If you want to find my content and come back for more later, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. But let's jump into it and start ranking the weapons. Alright, so I'm going to do the same thing I did with the long-range AR and LMG tier list video. I'm going to pick what I think is the most meta or the best all-around weapon first and rank that, and then I'll compare the rest of the guns with respect to that weapon, so I have a good baseline to compare to. So for the best all-around weapon, in my opinion, currently is the M4. It's very good up close, very good at range, really accurate, high fire rate, so you're flinching people a lot, good TTKs, and consistent TTKs because it does the same amount of damage to chest, stomach, and extremities. All do the same amount of damage at every drop-off. So that's my pick for the most meta all-around weapon. So we'll base everything off that. Alright, so first up, the M13. M13 is a very good gun at long range. It made it into my meta category of long range, but for all round, it's not quite as good because it doesn't have good TTKs up close. So you can't. Part of the goals of an all-round weapon is to be good up close and good at range. So the M13 is unique. You can kind of get the ADS times down a little lower than the M4, the Kilo, those kind of guns. So it's still pretty good up close because you can get really fast ADS times and get all those bullets on people quicker. And it shoots faster than the rest of them too, so it flinches them a lot. I think it's kind of, again, between sorta and very viable for me. I think I'm going to give it very viable though. It's a really good weapon, even as an all-rounder. And like I said, you don't really need the commando foregrip on the M13, so you can kind of replace that with like a tac laser or something, which makes it ADS way faster. But yeah, it's a good all-around weapon. Alright, so this is the comparison of the M4 and the M13 that I built. This is the M4 standard all-around build that I would run. So it's monolithic, Corvus barrel, commando foregrip, tac laser, 60-round mag. And then the M13's monolithic, longest barrel, tac laser, whatever optic you want. I just chose the GI Mini. And then 60-round mag. So you can look at the stats here and see that the ADS times are identical. Sprint to fire, tactical sprint to fire, movement, these are all identical between these two weapons. M13 has a little bit better ADS movement, same bullet velocity, and the M4 has a little bit better reload time. But if you look at the charts, switch it over to Warzone, full plate, you can see that the M4 is orange and the M13 is pink. So you can see the M4 goes way faster in that first damage drop-off range, and that's why I rank the M4 above the M13, because the M13 is great at range. Once you start getting out to like 40 meters or so, I would actually prefer this M13 build for sure over the M4. So it's better at range, but it's not anywhere near as good up close. So that's kind of why it doesn't sit at the same level as the M4 to me. Okay, so next up is the Grau. The Grau is similar to the M13 in that it doesn't kill as fast up close as the M4, but it's super accurate and a pretty versatile weapon. I think for an all-rounder, I'm actually going to give the Grau meta, just because you can get the ADS times down really low if you build it the right way, and you get that advantage of having great iron sights with it. So I think the Grau is a fantastic all-around weapon right now. The one issue is that it doesn't kill super fast up close, like I said. But if you keep that in mind when you're playing with it, and you try to keep people at 20 meters or more, then it's going to be a great weapon. All right, so comparing to that meta all-around M4 that I built earlier, I have two options here. I have the tactical suppressor and Archangel barrel versus the monolithic suppressor and Nexus barrel. So the other three attachments are the same. The other two have commando foregrip, tac laser, and 60-round mag on both options for the Grau. So you can see here, Grau number 2 is the Archangel with tactical suppressor. Slightly better ADS than the M4, but the Nexus barrel with the monolithic suppressor actually gives it more range and much better ADS times. You lose out on having that incredible Archangel iron sight, but the Nexus iron sight is still, in my opinion, quite a bit better than the M4 irons. So it's kind of a worthwhile trade-off in this situation to get the ADS times down. So in those 20-meter fights, you can ADS quicker and get your bullets on the target faster. The rest of the stats are pretty similar between the two weapons. You'll see that sprint to fire is always the same for ARs. Movement speed's gonna be a little better on the Nexus barrel just because it doesn't penalize you as much. Same with ADS movement. Bullet velocity is gonna be better on the monolithic and Nexus barrel just because the monolithic helps as well as the Nexus barrel. So let's jump over to the chart. So you can see on the chart, the Grau, the pink Grau is the tactical suppressor and Archangel barrel, and then the cyan Grau is the Nexus barrel with monolithic suppressor. And like I said, it doesn't kill quite as fast in that first damage range as the M4, or the second damage range, or the third damage range, but out past about 40 meters, I'd say it's significantly more accurate. So it is going to be better than the M4 long range. And then if you include that ADS time for those up close situations where you both see each other, you both have the ADS, and then put your bullets on the target, if you add that in, then the Nexus barrel Grau gets really close to the M4 in TTK. So that's kind of why I feel like it's almost worth it to use that Nexus barrel monolithic suppressor build instead of the Archangel with monolithic or tactical. All right, so next up's PKM. PKM is actually, of the LMGs, the only one that you can kind of make semi-viable as an all-around weapon. That's just because, again, that snatch grip helps with ADS time so much and recoil control. So the thing that holds LMGs back is the reload time, the movement speed, and generally the ADS times. But because the PKM has that unique snatch grip, it's sort of viable. So yeah, that's where it's gonna go. It's gonna go sort of viable. It's a great weapon. It is pretty good all-rounder, but still, just the nature of being an LMG, and I'll show you in the stats, just kind of holds it back a little bit in this category, but still a good weapon. So this is the all-around PKM that I've tried to run. So it's monolithic suppressor, tac laser, snatch grip, sleight of hand, and the close quarter stock. So obviously I'm trying to minimize ADS times here. And even doing that, the ADS time of the PKM still comes out 50 milliseconds higher than the M4A1. So it's not ideal still for an all-rounder, because 330 milliseconds of ADS time, if you're up close on somebody, that's just too long. If they have an SMG out, they're going to fry you for sure. Looking at the rest of it, the movement speed is going to be worse on the LMG just because it's an LMG. ADS movement speed is pretty close, but still a little bit worse. And then the two big ones are the bullet velocity is significantly lower on the PKM because it doesn't have a barrel for this build. Even if it does have a barrel, you can't quite get to the AR bullet velocity, so that's a big problem for long range engagements. And then reload time is painful even with sleight of hand. It's still over 6 seconds with sleight of hand, so that's kind of what makes this not very viable as an all-around weapon. We jump over to the chart. This is chest shots with PKM, so that's including ADS time. If we turn ADS time off, you'll see it looks like it's pretty close to the M4, but again, up close ADS almost always should be included unless you're hip firing. So if you include ADS, the PKM is going to take way longer to kill somebody than the M4 up close. It's going to be better at range, I would say. A little bit better. I would say they're similar in accuracy for me personally. But yeah, it kills fast, but it's hard to hit your shots at super long ranges, and you're going to get shredded up close by SMGs and other ARs. So that's kind of why it sits at sort of viable. So next up's the Bruen, and I mentioned that the PKM was one of the only LMGs that was sort of viable as an all-rounder. So for the Bruen, it's going to be not viable. There's no builds for the Bruen where you can get the ADS times down enough that it actually is decent up close, that makes sense for something that also is okay at long range. So it's just not a very viable weapon for all-round. So this is the build that I settled on to try to make the Bruen the most all-round as it could be. So monolithic suppressor, tac laser, close quarter stock, 60 round mags, and then an optic. I don't love the iron sights on it, so even with this build, you can see the ADS times are way worse on the Bruen, and that just makes it not viable up close. And there's things I could do to reduce the ADS time. I could put a tac suppressor instead of monolithic. I could use no stock instead of close quarter stock, but both those things make it way worse at range, and the idea is to be good up close and at range here, so that's why I didn't do that here. If we jump over to the chart again, including ADS time at 100%, Bruen's the pink line compared to the M4 as the orange line, so it's not even close. The Bruen's way slower, and it's going to be less accurate at range probably. Maybe similar in accuracy at range, I'll say. All right, Ram 7's the next up. So Ram 7 is an awesome all-around weapon. It's meta for sure. So if you're on with a sniper, I'd say Ram 7 is definitely a top tier choice. It kills extremely fast up close, and it's like the M4 where it does 28 damage to the chest, 28 damage to the stomach, 28 damage to the legs. So it's extremely consistent. You can shoot the guy in the toe and kill him as fast as you kill him shooting him in the chest, unlike something like the CR56 where you have to land every single chest shot to have a great TK. That's one of the reasons why I like the Ram so much, is it just feels consistent. And you can get used to the recoil. The recoil is weird, but you can definitely get used to it and learn how to be pretty proficient with it over time. So for the Ram 7, there's a couple different builds that I use primarily. This was the first gun I got Obsidian, so I obviously love the weapon. I use it with snipers. With the Val and the CR56, I don't use it that much anymore, but back in the day, it was pretty much all I used. So first build is Tactical Suppressor, Ranger Barrel, Tac Laser, 50 round mag, and Mini Reflex. So basically this is subbing out the Commando foregrip for a Tac Laser from my other build. My other build is just literally replacing that Tac Laser with the Commando foregrip. So obviously when you have the Commando instead of Tac, your ADS times are going to be a lot worse. Your movement's going to be worse, but it makes the gun way more accurate at range. But this first Ram is the one I use the most with the sniper right now. Just Tactical Suppressor, Ranger Barrel, Tac Laser, 50 round, and Mini Reflex. You can see that's number 2 on the chart here, so gives you really good ADS times, even better than the M4, and you get an optic. The other build has 339 milliseconds, so it's pretty slow, but you can kind of get away with that because its TTK is much better than the M4, so I'll show you that in the charts in a second. But movement speed, pretty similar to the M4. Build number 2 is going to be faster movement just because it doesn't have a Commando foregrip. Bullet velocity, the second build doesn't have a monolithic suppressor, so that's why it's a little slower than the M4. But then the monolithic suppressor build is going to be quite a bit, or not quite a bit, but a little bit faster than the M4. So let's jump over to the charts. Close this out. So this is pink is the tactical suppressor Ranger Barrel, and then cyan is the monolithic suppressor Ranger Barrel. So you get a little bit of extra range with the monolithic. And you can see that the TTK without any ADS times is better in the first range with the Ram, way better in the second range with the Ram, and then better in the third range again. That's just simply because it shoots faster, except this middle drop-off. This middle drop-off has 1 more damage per bullet than the M4, which equates to 1 less shot to kill, which is why the TTK is so drastically better in the middle zone. Keep in mind that's only for a full plate enemy. So this is one of those cases where it's good to look at DPS. There shouldn't be as much of a gap there for DPS, just because it's only 1 damage different, but that 1 damage causes there to be a big difference in TTK because of the change in shots to kill. But if you include ADS time in these charts, that the build that does not have a Commando foregrip and instead has a Tac Laser, obviously is going to kill a lot faster because you can ADS a lot faster. But like I said, even though the build with the Commando foregrip ADS is quite a bit slower than the M4, you can almost get away with it. So it's this cyan line compared to the orange line. That's just because the TTK is faster, but the ADS time is slower, so it ends up being a little bit slower, but not like drastically slower. But yeah, love the Ram 7. I'd say give it like a week to get used to it, and then you might also love it. Okay, so for the Oden, I've tried to make this work as an all-around weapon, and I just feel like it has too much recoil to ever really. So just that, and based with the stats as well, I'm going to give it a sort of viable. You can kind of get it close, being okay, but it just has too much recoil to be effective at range with builds that have good ADS time. So it's definitely not anywhere close to the M4 Grau, those kind of weapons. Alright, so this was my attempt at building an all-around Oden. So Colossus Suppressor is one of the best attachments in the game just because it has ridiculous range benefits, recoil benefits, and it acts like a long barrel, but it doesn't have the same penalties as a long barrel, so it doesn't reduce your movement speed or your ADS movement speed. It's just a great attachment, so I think we need to include that. 30 round mags I feel like is pretty essential, just to get that damage per mag up. Tac Laser, Elite Comb stock, that's the ADS reducing stock, and then rubberized grip tape because it still needs more help with ADS, but you put an operator on there that hurts you like 50 milliseconds of it. So it's painful to put an operator foregrip on here. So even though rubberized doesn't do very much, this is like one of those rare cases where it might be something to consider. But anyway, here's the stat comparison. So 281 milliseconds versus 329 for the Oden. So the Oden's way slower, even trying to minimize the ADS times on it. Movement speed's better on the Oden because there's no long barrel. Same with ADS movement speed. Bullet velocity is better on the M4 because it has both the monolithic and a long barrel. Jumping over to TTK. So we're on TTK chest shots. The M4 is a little bit faster. This is with full ADS time included. So because the Oden, I think on 0%, the Oden kills slightly faster than the M4 with chest shots. But again, the Oden's one of those guns that has that unique damage profile where it does more damage to the chest. So if I pop this to legs, look how much worse the Oden got compared to the M4. The Oden's the pink one instead of the M4 being the orange one. So it's not consistent. There's just no way to make it great as an all-round weapon, really. All right, next up is the SA-87. The SA-87 is very similar to the Oden in that it hits hard and is a decent gun, but it's just really hard to balance the ADS times with accuracy and recoil control at range. So I'm going to give it the same rank as the Oden because I feel like it's kind of in the same boat. Feels very similar to use. So this is about the best all-around SA-87 I could come up with. So it has monolithic suppressor, tac laser, ADS helping stock, 60-round mag, and then bipod's kind of unique because I feel like the gun doesn't feel like it has too much recoil up close. No attachments, but as soon as you are, 60 meters out, it feels like it needs help with recoil. So the bipod is unique in that it doesn't hurt your ADS times, doesn't hurt your movement speed. It's very situational. I mean, you could replace this with a foregrip of some sort, but the bipod helps a lot with recoil and crouched. Same as a Merc foregrip or an operator foregrip, but then doubles that when you're prone. So if you ever have the opportunity to do that, it's very helpful. So this is a unique situation where I think it's a decent choice. So ADS times, even with this build, are still way worse than the M4. Movement speed's about the same. ADS movement speed's a little bit faster on the SA-87. Again, that's because I'm using a bipod instead of a commando foregrip. Bullet velocity with the monolithic still is about 300 meters per second slower than the M4, so it's a pretty dramatic difference. If you go to TTK charts, you'll see that the SA-87, it gets demolished by the M4 up close, but then the SA-87 is a lot better at range again, so this is why it's not a super viable gun for an all-round weapon, just because it doesn't kill very fast up close. You go to chest. If you hit all chest shots, it kills pretty fast, but leg shots, it's dramatically slower. All right, so the CR56 AMAX. AMAX is definitely one of the best options in the game for an all-around weapon to run with a sniper right now. It kills really fast up close and is still decently accurate and okay at range. So AMAX is definitely met. We'll jump over to the data and show you that. Okay, so the AMAX build that I generally run with a sniper rifle would be monolithic suppressor, Zodiac barrel, tac laser, 45-round mag, and then the ADS reducing stock. Even with those two ADS reducing attachments, when the M4 only had the tac laser, it's still about 9 milliseconds slower than the M4. Pretty much a negligible difference, but still a difference. Movement speed, M4 is a little bit slower. ADS movement speed, M4 is a little bit slower, and that's just because of the M4 build has a commando foregrip and the AMAX does not. Bullet velocity, about 300 milliseconds slower, or 300 meters per second slower on the AMAX, and that's just because it has a lower base velocity than the M4. So that's not a huge deal though, because 1,000 is still decently fast, but it is still a negative for the AMAX. But if you jump over to the comparison chart and you look at TTKs, so this is leg TTK. So this is like the most ideal situation for an M4. If you're both hitting leg shots, the M4 kills way faster. But if you switch it over to chest shots, then the AMAX, the pink line, is significantly faster than the M4 everywhere. Now in this first range, if you miss one chest shot, it increases your time to kill by about 67 milliseconds because it's a full bullet. So even if you add 67 milliseconds to this, it's still a little bit faster than the M4. So I think the AMAX is a great option because it kills so fast up close, also kills pretty fast at range. But again, I like the M4 because it's consistent. Every part of the body does the same amount of damage. And if you swap around on the AMAX, you'll see that it's dramatically slower. And if you miss two chest shots, then it gets even slower. And it's just inconsistent. And I value the consistency of the M4, the Ram, and the Kilo, and the Grau. They all do the same thing where they have the same damage to the chest as they do to the person's toe. So it's like you can hit them anywhere, and that's really nice. All right, so the Holger, like I said in my other video about long-range ARs, it's kind of just a bad kilo, and that kind of holds true here as well. And the kilo's good as an all-rounder, but not fantastic. So I'm gonna give the Holger, I'm gonna give it sort of viable, just like these other ones. Where I mean, yeah, it's okay, but there's just no reason to use it when there's other options. M4, Kilo, Grau are all going to be way better options as an all-rounder than the Holger. So this Holger build was basically me trying to get the ADS times down as low as possible. I have the ultralight barrel, attack laser, ADS reducing stock, and stippled grip tape with the monolithic suppressor. And it's even with all of that, it's still just barely faster than the M4A1. Movement speed's faster, ADS movement speed's faster, but bullet velocity is not even anywhere near as fast as the M4. That's because this barrel, actually, the XRK ultralight, reduces your bullet velocity. Reduces it even more than the monolithic increases it, so it's a net negative. You do get the benefit of the 100-round mags, but overall, this bullet velocity makes it really bad at range. Recoil is going to be worse than the M4. It's just not very viable. TTK chart, pretty obvious, just like the other video. It's just worse than the M4 everywhere. Significantly slower at every range. So there's not a whole lot of reason to. The Holger is an all-round weapon. M91, M91's a lot like the Bruen. Not viable. Just too slow. Everything about it's too slow to be used as an all-around weapon. So this was me attempting to build an all-around M91. Didn't work at all. Monolithic suppressor, attack laser, stippled grip tape, mini reflex, and sleight of hand. Get that reload time down. You can see the ADS time is still just awful compared to the M4, which by itself makes it not viable up close. And then low bullet velocity and long reload time just kind of add to it and just make it worse. So it's not a gun to use as an all-rounder. So the Scar in my long range video got a decent rating, but for up close and all-round use, it's just really bad. So it's getting it really bad. It's not viable at all to use as an all-round weapon with a sniper. So to build the Scar all around, you kind of want something for recoil for long range. You want something to increase bullet velocity, and then you need a bunch of attachments to reduce the ADS time. So that's kind of what I was going for here. Monolithic, bipod foregrip, tac laser, 30-round mag, close quarter stock. And ADS times are the same as the M4 in that case. Movement's about the same, a little bit faster ADS movement. Significantly lower bullet velocity on the Scar than the M4, and obviously you only get that 30-round mag, which is painful for up close. So if we jump over to the comparison chart, you'll see what I was talking about. The TTK of the Scar is just horrible up close. It's okay at range. It's actually pretty good at long range, but it's awful up close. So that's the big reason why it's not viable. That along with the mag size. So it's not a good gun to use as an all-rounder. Okay, so the fin again has those two different options. It has the adverse barrel and it has just the regular barrels. As far as adverse barrels go, it's actually pretty decent. I'd kind of place it in between very viable and sort of viable. It has really good TTK up close, but it does have LMG reload and LMG movement. So I'm going to put it in sort of viable. I would say it's a little bit better than like the PKM or the Holger, but it's not enough for me to say it's very viable. It's just kind of okay. And then if you are talking about the fin with the regular barrel, not the adverse barrels, then I would give it a very bad, because it's very terrible TTK up close, slow ADS, slow movement. So yeah, regular barrel fin, definitely really bad, but it's sort of viable with the adverse barrels. It's not bad. It's an option. All right, so attempting to make an all-around fin is kind of not possible again. So I did monolithic, tac laser, sleight of hand, commando foregrip, and then the short barrel to help with ADS times. And then I did the exact same thing for the factory adverse version. So the adverse has a different damage profile but shoots way faster, so it actually kills pretty fast. You'll see it on the damage charts, but even with all these ADS reducing attachments, the ADS times are still worse than the M4. Even with sleight of hand, the reload time is really bad, and you only get 15 extra bullets. Bullet velocity is really bad on the fin, really bad on the adverse, so it's just not practical as an all-rounder. But looking at the chart here, you can see the adverse, the cyan line kills really fast with chest shots. I mean, that's a really quick TTK. Not a lot of things are significantly faster than the M4. The adverse is one of them. But if you go to like leg shots or something, then you can see the adverse, even the adverse is way slower than the M4. So it's just not a gun to run as an all-rounder. All right, the AK-47, it kills pretty fast up close, and it's decent at range, but the ADS times aren't very good, and it's hard to get them to the point where it'd be okay. It's not awful though. I'll give it a. This is another one I'm kind of in between very and sort of viable. I probably should have put another block in the middle between those two because it seems like I have that a lot, but it's in between. I'm gonna put a sort of leaning. I mean, I've told you, so it's kind of in between those two really, but you can get a sort of viable. Let's go look at the stats. All right, so this is the all-around build I went with: monolithic suppressor, tac laser, and optic because I don't like the irons on the AK at all. Merc foregrip for recoil, and then obviously 45 round mags to just so you have more shots you can put out, more damage to put out. So ADS time is still a little slower than the M4. Movement's a little bit better on the AK, and that's because I use the Merc foregrip instead of the Commando foregrip. Commando foregrip's more penalizing. Bullet velocity is quite a bit slower on the AK, and then reload time is a little bit better. But let's jump over to the charts and take a look at those. So leg shots, the AK is pretty awful again. If you switch it over to chest shots though, it'll be pretty competitive. Actually beats the M4 by a little bit with chest shots. If you add that ADS time in, it still beats it by a little bit. So it's semi-viable. I mean, it kills fast chest shots and it's still really good at range. Still kills really fast at range. And like I've mentioned a few times, after those first, I think it's like 4 bullets, it has significantly less recoil, significantly easier to control recoil. So if you just hold the trigger down when they're at range and then try to adjust for the recoil after those first 4 shots, it'll be a lot easier. AN-94, really bad. It's just a bad weapon. It doesn't have the TTK, and it is accurate at range, but it just doesn't have the TTK to be competitive up close at all. You're going to get destroyed by SMGs. You're going to get destroyed by other ARs. It's just bad. It's not viable at all for an all-rounder. All right, so the all-around build, I use monolithic suppressor, the Sela barrel, which is kind of like the middle barrel, helps with range and velocity, but doesn't help with recoil. Tac laser, reflex sight. I hate you can pick any sight, but I hate the iron sights on this thing, so I have to put an optic on it. And then casket mags, just so you have the bigger magazine. So comparing to the M4, we got worse ADS time, better movement speed, worse bullet velocity, same size magazine. But if you look at the TTK charts, it looks okay if you look at chest shots, but this is another weapon where if you swap it over to leg shots, you can see the pink is just not even close to the M4 anywhere. And I don't think this build's even going to be as accurate as the M4. It'd be close. But yeah, the M4 is just better everywhere and definitely feels better in game too. The FAL it's okay. It's good up close, and it's meh at range, but it's okay at range. So I'll give it the sort of viable. I think its strength is obviously it's still good up close even after that nerf when it used to be ridiculously good up close. It's just kind of okay now. But yeah, I give it sort of viable. Okay, so this is kind of how I would build it if I was trying to do a long range, not a long range, an all-around FAL. XRK marksman, that's the long barrel for it. Monolithic suppressor, tac laser, 30 round mag, and then close quarter stock. So this is using iron sights, so you'd have to swap out the close quarter stock if you wanted an optic, probably. Tac laser is kind of just too good to get rid of. So what this does for stats, ADS time is a little bit slower than the M4. Movement's a little bit better on the FAL. Bullet velocity is a little better on the M4, but not significantly different. But then if you look at TTK charts, so if you're hitting legs, these are leg shots. Pink is the FAL, significantly slower than the M4 everywhere. But if you swap it over to chest shots, it should be, it's a little faster than the M4 if you hit all chest shots. So it's still very good for that, but overall, it's not great. I wouldn't recommend it for an all-rounder. Actually, I'm changing my thoughts on the FAL. I'm switching it to not viable. It's just not good at all at range. So even though it's pretty good up close, it's going to be not viable just because of how bad it is at anything past 30 meters, especially with iron sights. All right, the MG34. This is, again, similar to the Bruen, the M91. It kills fast, but it's just too slow. Just everything about it's just too slow. ADS time, movement speed, sprint to fire time, everything's just too slow about the MG34, so I'm going to give it not viable, even though it has a great TTK. I just don't think it's a viable gun. The reload time's too long, ADS times are too slow, movement's too slow. So this is the MG34 that I built. Like I said, it's not really possible, but tactical suppressor, stubby barrel, tac laser, close quarter stock, and sleight of hand. Even with 3 attachments reducing your ADS time and not using a monolithic suppressor, it's still 359 milliseconds ADS. So it's just, you can't use it up close. It just won't work. Movement speed's too slow. Reload time, even with sleight of hand, is horrible. And this is with the stock magazine, so you only get 50 bullets. And this has a really high rate of fire, so you just run out of ammo instantly and have to reload mid-fight with a 6-second reload time. There's just no way. And bullet velocity is horrible, so it's a pretty bad gun. FR556, definitely bad. It's bad. It doesn't have the TTK up close, and it's not very good at range. It's okay. It's better at range than it is up close, but it's just not a good weapon for using as an all-rounder. It's not a good weapon to use as anything, in my opinion, but it's okay, like I said in the last video, if you swap it to single shot and use it like a DMR at range. But yeah, we're talking about all-round guns today, so it's not good at all for that. Okay, so this is the all-rounder that I built. So monolithic suppressor, tac laser, tac wrap, stock, which is the ADS helping stock. 50 round mag. It doesn't really need a 60 round mag just because it doesn't shoot fast enough to need a 60 round mag. That's a little benefit. It helps with the movement speed a little bit. And then Merc foregrip for the recoil. So a little bit slower ADS time, but basically negligible difference with the M4. Movement speed's a little better. ADS movement speed's better. Hip fire's a lot better. I mean, it's not super important in this case, but it is something. And then bullet velocity's quite a bit worse. So let's jump over to the charts. So chest shots, like I said, has horrible TTK in chest shots. So I forgot to mention this in my other video. I actually used the wrong plot for the FR556 in the long range video. There's a Warzone version of the gun on the website, and basically the difference is Infinity Ward removed the damage drop off of the FR556. There's only one normally, but they removed it completely, so there's only one damage range for the entire. I mean, if you shoot somebody 1,000 meters away, it does the same damage as 1 meter away with the FR556. So that's one of the benefits of it. They did that to try to make the weapon better. It's still not very good, but it's a little bit better because of that. And that's one of the reasons why you can kind of use it as a single shot DMR, because it doesn't have any damage drop offs anymore. So it's sort of viable as a single shot DMR, but as an all around gun, it's awful. TTK is terrible everywhere. Legs, chest, stomach. It's just bad everywhere. All right, the AS Val. So you guys probably know I made a whole video dedicated to the AS Val because I love it. But as an all-rounder, it's not fantastic. It's pretty good. I run it with a sniper all the time just because I love how reliable it is up close for beating someone else 1v1. And it's better than other SMGs at range for sure, because that first damage drop off is all the way out at 32 meters without any barrel. So it's like a super MP5 almost, long range and better TTK. So it's going to get a very viable. It's not going to be meta because it's not very good at range. So, I mean, 32 meters is like that's where the drop off is, and that's like where I think it's out of semi-effective too, is right around that 30 meter mark. But anything beyond that, you're going to have to use your sniper. So that's why I'm going to give it just a very viable, not a meta, because it's just not very reliable out past like 30 meters, which is one of the criteria for being a good all-around weapon in my book, is that you need to be able to shoot somebody 50 meters out if you both have ARs and still be reasonably accurate and reasonably good TTK. So Val still has good TTK out at that range, but it's not accurate. Has really bad bullet velocity, so yeah, that's why it's very viable. So when I'm running a sniper, this is how I run the Val. I use operator foregrip. The reason I choose operator is because you're not shooting people super far away, so you don't really need that much aiming stability to reduce that idle sway. Well, it's not really idle sway, but the sway while firing. The tac laser for ADS times, Strelok stock for recoil control. Operator foregrip was for recoil control too, because this gun has a lot of vertical recoil for sure. 30 round mags is a necessity. Sleight of hand is also a necessity. So comparing these two, between the M4 and the AS Val, you can basically see the Val looks like an SMG. I mean, it has way better ADS time, better movement speed, better ADS movement speed, better hip fire, and significantly worse bullet velocity. reload time, this reload time is actually wrong. I haven't updated it yet, but when you use 30 round mags with a Val, it actually increases your reload time. So more like 1.8 seconds. So it's still fast, but it's not 1.4 like it is with the 20 round mag. But if we jump over to the TTK chart, you'll see why I use this with snipers so much. So this is leg shots. We'll start with that, I guess. Even on leg shots, it's better than the M4 significantly out to 20 meters. And that's including bullet travel time. So if you turn that off, you can see that the actual TTK is just significantly better than the M4 even on leg shots. Then if you go to chest, switch back bullet travel time, because I do think bullet travel time is important and should be included. You can see it just demolishes the M4 up close. So that's why I enjoy running it with a sniper. If I do run it with a sniper, it's always with like a Kar 98, because Kar 98's it's not a sniper rifle, but it plays like a sniper rifle. So I use the Kar 98 with it because Kar 98 has better ADS times. It's more effective up close than the SPR. So if I'm running a Kar 98, I usually use the Val. If I'm running an SPR, which is a more long range sniper, but still has pretty good ADS times, then I'll run something like an M4 that has a little bit more range. So I just feel like the Kar 98's effective range is a little bit closer than the SPR because of those ADS times. So that's kind of how I theory craft my builds, is try to keep it balanced across all ranges where I'm effective everywhere. I don't really have a hole in where I'm good. So yeah, that's the theory there. So the Kilo is interesting. It's a great long range weapon and it's okay up close. Similar TTKs to the Grau up close. But it's hard. The iron sights aren't great on it like they are on the Grau. So you can't really get that extra attachment slot and still be effective at range because your iron sights aren't very good. But it's not bad. I mean, it's not a bad weapon to use as an all-around gun to run with like a sniper. So it has the same damage profile as the Ram 7. I'm gonna give it very viable. It's viable for sure, and it is good. It's just not top tier in my opinion compared to these other ones that I picked for an all-rounder. I don't think the Kilo is super viable. Alright, so this is just an example build for the Kilo, trying to make it an all-round weapon rather than just a long-range weapon. You got to get those ADS times down, so I did tactical suppressor because it's faster than the monolithic, tac laser because you got to get the ADS times down, SOCOM barrel instead of the Prowler barrel, which is the SOCOM barrel is like it still helps with recoil control, it just doesn't hurt your ADS times as much and it doesn't extend your range as much as the Prowler. And then an optic, you can pick whatever optic you want, and then 60 round mag. And this is just an example build. I don't actually use the Kilo very often for this kind of thing, so there might be better builds out there, but this is just what I came up with real quick. So ADS times with these two builds, Kilo even with that shorter barrel and tactical suppressor is still slower than the M4 that I've built. Movement speeds are going to be better on the Kilo because it doesn't have commando foregrip, but bullet velocity is going to be a lot lower on the Kilo. Reload times similar, and then comparison chart. This is chest shots, so the Kilo is going to be a little slower everywhere, and then if you include ADS time, it's going to get even worse. So even though the Kilo does one more damage per bullet in that middle range, it still matches the M4 and TTK because the M4 shoots faster. So that kind of makes up for it. I just think the M4 is a better option, which is why this got very viable and the M4 got meta. Okay, so this is the final tier list up on the screen. Again, these are just my opinions, so take them for what you will. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Like I said before, more than half of you aren't subscribed, so if you like my content and you want to come back and see it again, see some new videos, don't forget to subscribe. Sorry about the super long video. I feel like I'm becoming the Gamers Nexus of Call of Duty content, making these crazy long videos that are in depth. But yeah, thanks for your time. Hope you guys have a good day, and I'll see you all in the next one.